This is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Well, 1 week of the Trump presidency, so much has taken place already. One area we will focus on this morning potentially has to do with Houston and the Texas border. The president last week signing an executive order to start the process of building a wall along the border with Mexico, and also announced plans for penalties for so-called sanctuary cities. Here this morning to talk about it, Charles Foster, chairman of Foster LLP, a global immigration law firm. He is the founding chairman of the State Bar of Texas Immigration Law Section and past president of the American Immigration Lawyers Association. Dr. Jeffrey Hoffman is the director of the Immigration Clinic at the University of Houston Law Center. And Jared Whitfield is an attorney, former chair of the Harris County Republican Party. Thank you all for being here. President Trump ran on the wall, so it really shouldn't be a surprise that he made the announcement he did last week, is it?
Not a surprise, and I think it became a metaphor for his campaign, but it really doesn't make any sense. The best evidence of that is his own Secretary of Homeland Security, General John Kelly, who's a fine appointee. He said the wall really wouldn't be the solution. We already have a wall in the areas where it's really needed. It's really fencing. And I think to say we're going to spend upwards of $25 billion on the wall to fulfill a campaign promise that never made any sense is just a total waste of money and time and effort.
I get the sense that you would agree with that and you wouldn't.
That's exactly right. And it's refreshing to see an elected official who campaigned on one thing actually delivering on that promise early on in their administration. So that's extremely important. And obviously, this made sense to a whole lot of Americans, and that's why President Trump received 306 electoral college votes. This was his primary mandate, and he's delivering.
Dr. Hoffman, that's an interesting point, that whatever we may think at this table, voters said, we want this guy.
Well, I think that we have to look at the executive order and the language in the order, because it's there are actually three separate orders. And the most troubling aspect of it is the interior enforcement and how he's going to basically expand interior enforcement to anybody who has any charge of any criminal charge as opposed to a conviction. He's going to expand it to anybody who is entered without inspection. And so basically, this is going to really create a problem for the immigrant communities who are going to be afraid to have a relationship with the police.
You were chomping at the bit there earlier when he was talking about voters said this is the guy we want based upon what he said.
Well, George said he's doing it because it's a campaign promise, but it still doesn't make sense. Most, all the people, why did they support that? Because the border was wide open, people flooding across the border. All of that was completely false. We have the lowest rates of illegal immigration since Richard Nixon was president. It's gone down dramatically. The rates coming from Mexico are extremely low. Mostly are coming from Central America, and under the 2008 Child Protection Reauthorization Act, they're surrendering themselves at the border. Even President Trump in his remarks talked about the Central Americans. The wall isn't going to affect them at all. Mexico's not going to pay a penny for it.
Well, that's interesting you said that, because other than the controversy about the idea of building the wall in the first place, there is that idea about who's going to build it. Here's what President Trump said to ABC's David Muir.
Ultimately, it'll come out of what's happening with Mexico. We're going to be starting those negotiations relatively soon, and we will be in a form reimbursed by Mexico, which I've always said.
So they'll pay us back?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So the American taxpayer will pay for the wall at first?
All it is we'll be reimbursed at a later date from whatever transaction we make from Mexico. Now, I could wait a year and I could hold off the wall, but I want to build the wall. We have to build the wall. We have to stop drugs from pouring in. We have to stop people from just pouring into our country. We have no idea where they're from. And I campaigned on the wall, and it's very important, but that wall will cost us nothing.
Jared, you hear that, and I know you're fiscally conservative in many ways. Are you concerned at all about the fact that we're not really sure about how that wall is going to get paid?
Absolutely not. This guy's a deal maker. Of course, there's a trade deficit with Mexico, so we know there are plenty of opportunities for that to be ultimately compensated for by the Mexican government, one. Secondly, I mean, there's a huge underlying problem, if you ask me. So think about all the people who are sitting in line at their country of origin saying, I'm going to abide by the laws of the United States. They go through that process, and it can take some time. We can refine that process and make it better. But these other folks are just saying, I'm going to just thumb my nose at the law. I'm going to come here illegally. I'm going to benefit off the U.S. taxpayers' back. And that's just plain wrong from a fundamental perspective. And I think people have object to that. And that's why President Trump is now President Trump by a substantial majority of those voting in the Electoral College.
Well, let me just respond to that. I think this idea that there's this illegal immigration pouring across the border is another alternative fact that Trump is espousing.
This is and both of you are talking about facts. By the way, nothing but the truth is a philosophy of this program here. Hashtag nothing but the truth. Anything that's not truth, we'll vet it. And after we tape it, we'll make sure on Facebook we'll vet it as well. If it's not true, we're going to talk about it.
And here's a question, just let me ask, because these gentlemen would know as well as anyone. I think we can all agree there are illegal aliens coming across the border. There can be a dispute as to what that number is, but I don't think there's any doubt that people are crossing this border illegally. You need only look at the individual that killed Kate Steinle, who was an illegal alien.
This is, again, this alternative universe. Yes, they come across the border illegally, but in the lowest rates in 40 years. You would think from the rhetoric it's out of control. Yes, unfortunately, we have a large undocumented population here, but mostly came 10, 20, 30 years ago. And some are criminals, but they commit crime at the lowest rates of any group in America.
Let's back. They're not just
the fact that the numbers that there are, in order to get them, that they're as low as they've ever been, really.
And the net migration from Mexico is zero.
Hey, let's talk about that. Let's talk about that. But they say the numbers, but they won't give you a number. What are the numbers? Is it 100,000? Is it 200,000? Is it 1 million? Is it 5 million? You say the numbers are there, but you say they're lower. But what is the number?
The numbers have been established statistically.
What is the number? How many came over last year?
The numbers that came over last year, back in, I think, 2005, we had...
No, last year. What about last year?
Somewhere several 100,000. Most of them were Central Americans surrendering themselves.
And at the border.
How did they get there, though? Because of catch and release. Why did they surrender at the border? Because we have a policy that Trump is getting rid of catch and release. So you come, they catch you, go on back. But how do they get here? They have to go through Mexico.
Stop. I want to make sure that we have a conversation that we're going to. So you say that what he's saying is distorted. Why so?
Because it's distorted to the extent that the wall will have no impact on this. I'm citing now General John Kelly in his testimony over a period of years. Anyone, even the Border Patrol, only calls for 23 miles additional fencing. This is really a distortion. If you really wanted to spend that money, we should have more immigration judges, more trial attorneys. If you're put into deportation proceedings today, your hearing may not be set until the year 2019. President Trump has promised a freeze on hiring, so he's actually going to make things worse. One more thing. The president has already, in my opinion, will cause more illegal immigration. Why is the illegal immigration down from Mexico? Because the economy is getting better. He's going to do more to destroy that economy, therefore causing more of a surge of illegal immigration from Mexico.
And both of you have points to make on
Well, and you need only ask Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel whether or not walls and fences work. They do. And the reality is we are in a whole different environment where there are terrorists, there are narco-drug traffickers who are doing everything they can to penetrate our border. It makes all the sense in the world for us to put up a barrier similar to what's done in Israel to present and keep our folks safe. We have a process. We have a legal process for folks to come here legally. And if you want to come to the United States, just to
it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense to diminish our values as a country to ban refugees. This is another important point. 120-day ban on all refugees. That diminishes our international legal obligations as Americans.
How?
Because we have an international legal obligation under the protocols of the refugee convention.
If you have a country that is notorious for producing folks that are causing very bad things to happen, and you don't have a proper vetting process in place.
That's another false.
Don't we want to protect our citizens? Isn't that our ultimate goal of the Commander-in-Chief, to protect us?
Jared, that's another thing, this alternative facts. Mr. Trump says we do not have a proper vetting process. The fact is, it is a proper process.
It's a two-year.
It is the longest, most complicated process of any group.
Well, okay,
so
let's say Afghanistan. How do you check records in Afghanistan from someone who has been living in a tribe all their life? What so you're putting credibility in the system that is implemented by a Taliban government at one point to actually vet that individual and the records associated with that individual's conduct while in Afghanistan. It just doesn't work, and I don't have confidence in it.
At any given time, there are millions and millions of people in refugee camps that have been living there for years. We're taking a slim
very small percentage.
Minority, very slim, almost a sliver, almost a symbolic.
Can we agree there's a risk?
There's a risk to drive your car, but you still drive your car.
Well, me driving my car is not going to result in millions.
We're out of time on this conversation. Clearly, it looks like we're going to have to do a whole half hour. Did you say that?
I would agree.
So we'll make plans to come back.
I would love that.
Full hour, half hour on that. Jared, you're back again.
Always great to be with you.
Okay, we're going to have several verses of Kumbaya right after this. Charles Foster, Jeffrey Hoffman, Jared Woodfield, thank you for coming in. We appreciate it.